Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we have as our guest Hannah Keeling, who is the head men's and women's coach at Georgia Gwinnett College in the Atlanta area. Hannah and I first met at the Intense League inaugural kickoff weekend a couple months ago, and she and I started talking, and I realized she would make such a great guest for the podcast. A, because she is a current college coach and has been coaching for several years now. B, because she is a former college player at Clayton State University in the Atlanta area. And C, because she went through the recruiting process from the UK and has some interesting stories to tell about her upbringing in junior tennis and her experience going through recruiting. So I'm excited for her to chat with us today and for you to get to hear her story. Before I bring her on, though, quick reminder, if you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe to all of our social media channels. That would be YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. And if you're not already, please visit our website at parentingaces.com and sign up to become a subscriber of our e-newsletter, which goes out once a month and just brings you a few updates as to what's going on in the junior and college tennis world. Now, before I bring Hannah on, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Coach Hannah Keeling. Hannah, it's great to see you again. It was so fun meeting you in Atlanta and having the opportunity to chat with you about your tennis life and about your life as a head coach. And I am just super excited to have you on the pod.
No, thank you so much for having me again. It was awesome to meet you in Atlanta at Intense. So I'm happy we can connect here now on your awesome podcast.
Thanks. So before we jump into the meat of the conversation, since you are a first timer on Parenting Aces, I would love for you to give our audience a little bit of your tennis story, how you got started playing tennis and kind of what your journey looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you may be able to tell, I'm originally from England, but I've lived here now for about 15 years over in the States, predominantly in Atlanta. And I started tennis when I was 6 years old, multi-sports, trying out a little bit of everything. And tennis was that thing that just seemed to click. I've always had a racket in my hand. And it kind of went from there. I seemed to be pretty competitive naturally and just loved competing. And as the years went by, ended up playing high-level tennis in England and in Europe. And then I remember one day I had a college recruiter reach out to me essentially and say, hey, did you know about US colleges and the opportunity for you to be able to go to the States on a full scholarship? And to be honest, at that time, I didn't know much about it. I was a little bit older, so I didn't have the typical route essentially. So I was only eligible to go D2, D3 or JUCO NAI. I had passed the window for Division I. So I ended up going to Clayton State. They were number 4 nationally. I saw they were in Atlanta, Georgia. So I was like, absolutely, I still want to compete. I would love to get my degree and the chance to play for a school and the chance to get into national championship. That was the goal. So yeah, and then many years ago, I loved my experience of playing in college. It's what essentially led me to be here today and to be able to provide that for other student athletes. I just fell in love with the whole college experience and being part of a family and being able to provide that home from home, but allowing kids to grow and fulfill their dreams and whatever they want to get from their college experience. So after college, I went into higher level coaching at Olde Towne Athletic Club in Atlanta. I was there for a few years, and along that pathway, I was kind of like, right, I think I really want to step into the college area. It's something that I feel would, fulfill my dreams, and I feel like I love that high performance aspect. So I could give my experience and grow in that area. So one day I was helping out actually at Georgia Gwinnett College. I met the former head coach Chase Hodges, who's now senior VP of UTR, and we connected instantly. I was talking to him about wanting to get into college tennis, networking. Who does he know? How do I do this? And then, funnily enough, a couple months later, his assistant position opened, and he felt I was the right fit to be the assistant men and women's coach at Georgia Gwinnett. So I was there for an amazing 4 years in this program, and then it was time for me to step into a head coach position. So I then landed the role at Missouri State. It's in the MVC conference in Springfield, Missouri. Loved every second of it. And then Georgia State opened. So obviously thinking that I'm a ATLian kind of thing, I was like, well, if I could get back to Atlanta, that would be awesome. So I ended up back at Georgia State, was there and loved every second of Georgia State. And then kind of full circle moment, Chase ended up finishing 10 years at Georgia Gwinnett. And essentially I had the phone call, like, would you be interested in taking over GGC and having the opportunity to be part of a men and a women's program, a national championship program filled with history on both sides, up here in Lawrenceville. And how can you say no to that? You know, a place that essentially started off my college career. I knew everything about the programs and the place and the athletics department, and it was a very easy yes for me. So I took over in 22, and here we are now in 2025, back at GGC and the head coach of the men and women's team.
That's awesome. And I love that not only did you go through the junior and college tennis journey yourself, you also have coached at the junior level and now at the collegiate level. So you're such a great person to talk to about what these junior players need to know and what their parents need to know in terms of development and readiness to be attractive to college coaches as they move into their recruiting years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think without realizing at the time, I kind of hit all areas of that. And I think it's allowed me to be very, insightful. I am connected a lot with the Georgia tennis, Southeast tennis. So it's easy for me to be able to give advice on not necessarily do you always have to go to a Division I program. There's still different routes that you can take depending on what you need, what you're looking for. Don't always think D1. I mean, D1's incredible. I've had my experience there. But for some students, that may not necessarily be the right fit. So there is other ways to have an incredible college experience in different divisions to, maximize your potential, essentially.
So as a college player yourself, you played in a Division II program.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know it's been a few years, but not that long. Can you talk a little bit about your experience going through recruiting as an international athlete and then your experience as an actual student athlete at Clayton State?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I think what I was personally looking for at the time, they had just reached the semifinals of D2 national championships. I was talking to a few other schools. I was looking for that high level. I'm naturally a very competitive person, so I wanted to go into a place where I was being pushed on court, but also had a really good academic program as well. And my degree was in health and fitness management, and that's something that was key for me to stay in that exercise science field. It's something I really wanted to do. So that kind of narrowed down. Some schools didn't have as big, those academic programs. And then I saw that Clayton State was that high level D2 program with big goals. And it was in Atlanta, which was huge for me, essentially, because being in that big city really appealed to me, and also knowing how big Atlanta tennis was, because I did my research, obviously, on the city as well before I arrived. So that was really
Plus, it's
important
an easy city to travel back to the UK.
And that is big plus too. Those flights,
yeah.
Connecting flights can be a bit of a headache sometimes. So that was a big perk as well, being able to fly home easy if my family wanted to visit, and that kind of stuff also.
So when you got to Clayton State, was it everything that you thought? Were there some surprises? Because, I've talked to several international athletes over the years, and a lot of times they really don't know what they're getting into when they come here to play college tennis.
Yes, no, and it's funny now looking back, I didn't even know what a Scantron was. I think the biggest piece that I realized when I came here, how different academically things were. Every country's different, obviously, but I think that was the piece that I knew least about. So, it took me, I would say, a whole academic year to finally get used to how things are done over here in the college system. And I can only imagine how that is for students that don't speak English as their first language and anything like that. So that was a big piece, but it was very easy. The school had great student athlete academic support. They made me feel very welcome from day one, with whatever I needed. And my coach was awesome. He was very great communication. Essentially, I had that good relationship with him where I told him what my goals were, and that's what you need from a college coach, because everybody's different. Everybody may have different goals, different visions, and he did a great job in pushing me to try and be the best that I could be. So I felt very fulfilled with my college experience, that's for sure.
That's awesome. And now that you're at GGC as the head coach and you're recruiting athletes from all over, and I want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what sets NAIA apart from the other divisions. But do you find that you're drawing on your own personal experience as an international recruit when you're out there trying to sell GGC to these student athletes that are hopefully going to come join your team?
For sure. I think naturally that is something that I do, because I have been through that experience. I have moved across the world to come here. So to try and give the student athletes that comfort in knowing, hey, I've probably been through what you're going through. I've experienced this. That is definitely a big part in how I create the culture here at Georgia Gwinnett on the men and women's side, for sure. So I do have a majority international team from all over the world, which is incredible. But now, because GGC is on the map, I'm starting to get some really high level American players also, which I think is also showing that NAI is becoming, has had more awareness from Americans and American families, which is something I really want to continue to do, to provide that as well.
Can you talk a little bit, Hannah, about what sets NAIA apart from Division I, II, III, and JUCO, junior college?
Absolutely. From my experience, from my student athletes, I think, a lot of the high level that we have, the NAI allows them to have that little bit longer to continue to play after high school. So they're not so much within that 6-month period and they have to make a decision immediately. They can say, okay, I've done a year of trying to figure out what's the best fit for me. So it does have a little bit more leniency with admissions and eligibility in that sense, which I think is a huge benefit, because I didn't know what I wanted to do right outside of high school or where I wanted to go, kind of thing. And I feel like the GGC now has over 13,000 students. So it's a big school, and these schools, being a public school that we are, the academics are super high quality, and the NAI really focuses on that student athlete experience with academics. And I think that is something that student athletes that are looking to be recruited do also need to look at that academic standpoint as well. If the tennis program is awesome, but it may not have, what you want to study, your major, that kind of stuff. I think that is one part that the NAI does really well, is the academic piece. That's something they focus a lot with the student athletes also. So, and another aspect here that we have as well is a lot of my players still like to play the pro events, and still like to travel to play. So we have a lot more flexibility, so they can have that full, the full experience of hitting everything, academics, tournaments, competing, national championships. So I feel like they have everything in their plate for what they look for without having as many restrictions, I would say. So that's the biggest piece, I think, for sure.
So we recently had Jordan Cox on the podcast, and he played at Georgia Gwinnett and talked a lot about his experience there. And he had kind of a unique path to get to Georgia Gwinnett. He also was pursuing high-level tennis, was then pursuing, career not in tennis, and realized he wanted to come back and get his degree and play more tennis. And NAIA allowed for that. He did end up losing 1 year of eligibility, but he still got that full college tennis experience while pursuing his degree, and it allowed him to, really follow his dream path. And I think for a lot of us that aren't knowledgeable about NAIA and what it entails, there's this misconception that NAIA is less competitive, that the level, is at the bottom of the college division heap. And that's just not true.
Yeah, that's so not true. That's and you make a really good point as well. Most of my student athletes do not have the regular path to college. And like Jordan, he's a Grizzly legend. He helped start the program here, and we kept it going. But for example, having that high player like him coming to an NAIA program just shows the level of NAIA. And now, all these years later, because it is much more known, the level's just gone up and up and up and up, and it's so competitive. So it really stands out to me. Wouldn't want to be, if people don't know about NAIA and they don't have that regular college path and they end up not going to college or not being able to continue tennis, I think that's such a shame, because we actually do allow and help and can navigate through that in the NAI with less restrictions, obviously making sure you still meet the criteria, but it is a lot easier than Division I. So the top NAI programs are super competitive, and it's just awesome to see now how it's growing.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the schools that you guys compete against, not just in conference, but also just throughout the year?
Yeah, absolutely. So GGC itself is independent, but NAIA programs don't just play NAIA programs. So we can play any division, anywhere, at any time, essentially, which is also the beauty of being NAI. So for example, in NAI, the top programs, you go from anywhere from GGC, then you have Kaiser, you have Tennessee Wesleyan, Southeastern, and they're all, a lot are in the Southeast. You have Xavier, Holy Cross, and they're all spread out across the country now, which allows us to travel more, get a lot more high competitive matches. So no match is ever easy, anymore. So that's what I love, and that's what the students love, because you want to compete, you want to get better, for sure. So, and I think that, now it is more well known. You have a lot of kids, if they do still want to play, could go to NAI and then essentially transfer out when they become eligible for Division I also. So that is the pathway that we can provide for student athletes. One of my former guys, DK, he's actually at Wake Forest. Now he won a national championship, came to us for a year, and then transferred out to Wake Forest when he was D1 eligible. So he now has the double championship, and I think that is a piece as well that people may not know about, that if you can't get into D1 initially, or that you want to stay closer to home, or you want to do a different route, that is something that we can also do at NAI.
I love that. I love that. And I think, what one of my goals has been to get families, to get junior coaches to think outside the D1 box, because D1 is not right for every student athlete. And there are so many incredible opportunities outside of D1. And people who've been watching or listening to this podcast for a while have heard me preach this numerous times. But, as a former junior coach as well, Hannah, what is something that we can do to help junior coaches better understand these opportunities outside of Division I and better communicate those opportunities and encourage their players and the parents of those players to really seriously look at these programs outside of Division I, especially now with these new changes from the NCAA. NAIA is not subject to the roster limits, is not subject to the scholarship limits. That's a big bonus.
Big bonus, yes, for sure. I think what I try and do locally, at least, or anywhere that I go, if local clubs try and get, it doesn't have to be a D1 tennis match that you go and watch. If you have a local NAI program, D3, D2, go out and watch, because it's just as competitive. It's same college experience. So I think it's important to not necessarily just focus on the D1s, but if you could get out in your community, or if there's a college match and you have a tournament, and West Florida D2 is playing down in Pensacola, then go check it out, because most times people are surprised by the level, and second of all, how cool and how good of experience that college match is, because college tennis is college tennis. At the end of the day, whatever division you're in. So I think that's a great way to get awareness. And I think, myself, I try to get into the community and clubs, and, speak to coaches. And we host a lot of events here at Georgia Gwinnett, UTR events. And I think it's a great way for people to see that, NAI is doing this also. NAI has this facility that we have, not just Division I programs.
Right. And I can tell you, just from my experience with my son playing junior tournaments, he played several at GGC, and the facilities there are spectacular. Actually nicer than the Division I schools he played for. So there's oftentimes nice budgets at NAI schools. A lot of times they're getting private funding from people or companies that want to support the program. I know GGC's got some incredible endowments and is well funded. What do you see as the future of college tennis with these new NCAA rules, with the House settlement, with NIL, with all of that?
I think it's a tricky question. It's because I've been following in depth, actually. And to go back to your point, about playing at a smaller school, some of these mid-major programs, I couldn't believe how many have been cut this year. Division I mid-major programs. And, looking at it from our perspective here at GGC, we may have less sports than a Division I program, but I'm very thankful that the athletic department really makes us feel like we are the big sport here at GGC. We're just as big as baseball or soccer, or basketball. So, sometimes it doesn't matter what, school you're at. You want to make sure that the program has that longevity behind it. And it's such a shame to see these mid-major and big programs cut tennis essentially, and then these kids don't know where to go. It could be last minute. So I hope that now things settle a little bit. And to go back to your point on recruiting and speaking with parents and stuff, that's something is a question that should be asked when you're in the recruiting process as well. Do you have a significant budget? Is the school behind the program? Because with all of this NIL and everything, the D1 with some with 10 scholarships, you want to make sure that you're going into a program where if you want to play, that you are playing, and all of that kind of stuff. So it definitely opens a whole new book to college tennis, I would say. But that's a really good point in the recruiting aspect, that you're looking at all areas now, because there's so many more areas that you need to ask questions about, for sure.
Yeah, and just because the NCAA says Division I can offer 10 scholarships, it doesn't mean that the individual program has the funding for 10 full
Correct.
scholarships. So, just because the NCAA says it doesn't necessarily mean that the school you're looking at is going to be able to offer that. And that is an important part of the conversation for a lot of families. They're relying on that scholarship money to help fund their child's college education. So very, very important that you're asking those questions about budget. And when I say you're asking the questions, I mean the prospective student athlete, not mom and dad.
Yes.
Yes. And Hannah, maybe you can comment on this as well. And I talk about this a lot too, but the importance of the prospective student athlete in leading their recruiting process.
100%. That is a big thing that I look for when I am recruiting. I want to see a student athlete also interview me, kind of thing. Ask questions about how the program is run, get into detail, because you really, it is a big decision, going to what school. Your whole life is changing. You're going into this new chapter. And I think it's really important that you ask those questions, even if they're uncomfortable or they feel unnatural to you. It's a good experience to ask them, to really find out if that is the right fit for the program. If the program is the right fit for you, essentially. And I do really tend to draw closer to those student athletes that do ask those questions, because I know that they're really invested. And when they come here, they're going to be invested because they're asking key questions. They're inquisitive. They want to know more and eat, breathe, and sleep what we do here, kind of thing. So that is a big part of it as well.
Other than the budget question, what are some questions that you wish more prospective student athletes would ask you?
Yeah, I love it when student athletes ask me a little bit more about the goals of the program. It's clear here that our goals are to win a national championship. That's what we've done and have been doing. But that is awesome. But a big goal is, for me as a coach, what do you want me to help you with? How do you want to grow? Because everybody is different. Every student is different. And if I know these questions and get these questions, it helps our relationship. It helps me build the culture of the team. And we know and can create that relationship based on that information and those questions that you're asking. It may be Coach, I want to continue. I want to reach 600 WTA in 2 years. Okay, awesome. And by doing that, you're feeding into our goals of the program, but I'm also feeding in and helping you as well. And it may just be, nope, coach, I want to go to NASA or take my master's and do this. Okay, awesome. How do I help you on that aspect as well? So I think that's a question that I don't get as much. I don't get as often, essentially. Some of the regular ones is always about scholarships, practice, training, which is great. But always ask the coach their goals for the program. How's the coach going to keep elevating the program? Where do you see the program? 2, 3, 5 years. Who else are you looking to recruit? What other recruits do you have coming into the program? I've had that question a few times, and I love it because I want them to, some players may not want to come in and play number one initially. So ask who you have coming into the program from the beginning. Do you want to start lower and work yourself up? Do you want to grow? So those are key questions as well that I look for sure.
On that note, there has been a lot of different information going around about the notion that if you are not in the top 6 your first year, that it's very difficult to play your way into the lineup. What is your approach to that, to a player that comes in at number 7, 8, 9? Are you as a coach looking to recruit more 1s, 2s, and 3s to your program, or are you looking to build from the bottom up?
I think it has to be a balance of both, essentially. If you are playing at 7, 8, even 9 in the program, I tend to keep a roster of 8 on both sides, but that can vary as well. It depends on who's coming in, who wants to play. I love to have a large roster because the key players, it doesn't matter if you're 1 or you're number 8 in the program. The number 8s are just as important as the number 1, culturally and for tennis. You never know what may happen. Someone in that lineup could get injured. Next best person in, and that's the expectation. So I think, my guys that don't necessarily play all the time, the regular, they know that they are just as important as the guys that play, and they provide that support. They get better, they compete hard, and they're ready to go. And that's what you want from your team, essentially. And then from a coach's aspect as well, when you are recruiting, the goal is to continue to recruit better than you have the year before. You want to keep elevating that program. And that's whether you're 1 or 9, it really doesn't matter. And that's how you keep the success of the program and the culture of the program strong, I believe, anyway. So
yeah. No, I think that's great. And I do think, players who come into a program knowing that they're the number 7, 8, 9, it's important to understand what that means in terms of playing time, and
absolutely.
that you are going to still be expected to show up at practice. You're going to still be expected to keep your grades up. You're be expected to be in the gym, all those things. And you may not be on the court during dual match day. And are you okay with that? So a lot of times players will accept offers from schools knowing that they're never going to play, and that's fine with them. But to accept an offer where you are not in that top 6 and think you're going to work your way in, and you haven't had that conversation with the coach who's recruiting you, big mistake.
Yeah, and I think they've got to be, transparency is key in the recruiting process. If you are recruiting someone, do you want to have that 10 scholarships that may not make the top 6? And that has to be transparent from the beginning, but expectations have to be set, all along. And I think that is how it should be, for sure. And student athletes need to ask those questions. Do you think I will be able to get into the top 6 after my freshman year? And the coach should always tell them and be honest with them, yes or no, essentially. But as a coach, you never know, because you could get someone in that just works so hard and just excels like this. Amazing. That's what you want. You want them to get into the top 6, and you're doing your job as a coach, essentially.
Right.
There. So, yeah, I think that's a key part for parents and student athletes to ask as well.
And you look at yourself as someone who is there to help further develop these players, right? I mean, not every college coach takes that stance. A lot of them want the fully developed player already so that they can just rack up wins. You are looking at these players as an opportunity for you as a coach to keep plying your trade and work on your skills in developing them as players. So there are all sorts of college coaches out there, and that's why these conversations are so crucial.
Yeah, and I think, for speaking on myself personally, that's my passion, is coaching. College coaching, it's my passion, and I want to get the best out of every student athlete, because then I'm doing my job, so, and that's very rewarding, and I want them to leave after their college experience by me helping navigate them to grow and to mature, and to leave saying, you know what, you've helped change my life, or given me this pathway in life. And that's really important for me personally, and to grow on and off the court, because tennis won't always be around for everybody. So getting into that real world after tennis, that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and I think you embody that. Not only have you moved from junior tennis to college tennis to junior coaching to college coaching, and pardon my poor segue here into intense, but this summer you also had an experience coaching a professional league in Atlanta. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your experience coaching the Atlanta team the kickoff weekend at Intense.
Oh, that was an amazing experience. Intense did a phenomenal job. Completely different format, high pressure, that one serve and pointer like this in the bolts. It was just an amazing experience to be in that environment. The Atlanta team, all teams were such high level. They came from, all different places in the country, in high level tennis, pro tennis, but to play in that team environment like college was phenomenal. And I really love the format. I think it's actually something we started here when they started Intense, doing some of these bolts in practice, because you're under pressure the whole time, so, and it's fun and it's high competitive, and it takes you out of that. For me, the experience was being able to talk and communicate, and the crowd was being loud. Takes you out of that original tennis, lifestyle where people are quiet and they're watching the points. And it's just like college tennis, people are loud, they cheer your teams on. And I think it's such a good pathway for tennis players. It adds a whole completely new dynamic. The junior Intense and the challenge Intense matches, where people play and compete to play against these pro and high level college players. I thought it was just phenomenal experience. And like college, being a coach of a team, but completely different format. So it was awesome experience for sure.
Talk a little bit more about bringing the Intense format to your college team back at practice, because we had this conversation when I was there, and I was talking with the Georgia Tech coach and the UGA coach, and they were talking about how they were doing some of this during their summer camps with their kids that were there for summer camps. But what, in your mind, are some of the key pieces of the Intense format that you feel like are helping your GGC players improve and be better competitors when it comes time to play their dual matches?
Yeah, I think the biggest one I could think of is that one serve, the one serve aspect that you're under pressure continuously.
And it's not just one serve. Let's clarify. It's one toss and one
toss.
serve.
Yes, key point there. Yes, one toss, however it is, you've got to hit it. And I think we did this with the teams before nationals for fun. It was great team bonding and had the guys and girls all together. And I think, it allowed them to feel that pressure moment, but still enjoy competing at the same time. Um, you know, whatever match you're in, it could be 3-3 and you're serving to win and it's a big conference match or a national championship match and you have that one serve, if you can do it and try and get those feelings in practice, then it will translate into when it matters in the big moments in matches. So that was how we used it. Great team bonding. I loved that part. It got very competitive with the women and the men for sure. But yeah, I think that format, the 2 points for a winner, I think that was also very good in terms of tennis, that you don't always have to go for a winner. You've got to pick the right moment. Excuse me. You have to pick the right moment. Got to be patient in these moments. If you're down, probably not going to go for a 2-point winner unless it's the perfect opportunity. So there's all these different areas of it, which I will definitely keep using with my teams and keep supporting the intense format, because I think it's a game changer for sure.
And I think, there are a lot of parents who reach out to me and they're like, my kid plays so well in practice, but then they get to a tournament and everything just kind of goes out the window. They fall apart.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about trying to train the way you want to play in a tournament. But
100%,
it is very challenging. It's challenging to create those pressure moments in practice, because there is nothing on the line. There's not a trophy. They're not ranking points. They're not UTR, gains and losses and whatever. But this intense format of one toss, one serve, 2 points for a winner, which not only is great for the person contemplating going for the winner, but it's also great for the person on the other side of the net to force them to make every effort to get a racket on the ball. So it's not counted as a winner, right?
Yeah.
So there's incentive on both sides there. And I think for junior players who do have trouble kind of translating what they do in practice to what they do on the tournament court, this format is a great one for junior coaches to incorporate into their training as well.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. And as you said, that is a big part in junior tennis, and it can happen in college tennis as well. Someone's playing phenomenal in practice, but the pressure of playing a match and being in a team also, and knowing that the team is relying on you for their point and everything like that. So I really think Intense provides that similar feeling, which you want to try and create in practice. So I really think clubs and everything should buy in and start doing more intense in it for sure, because I know for a fact that my team absolutely loved it. And actually one of the girls said, I feel a lot more comfortable with my second serves now, because at the end of the day, that's all she could rely on when she did the intense format. And running down balls and being exhausted in between the points, and then still maintaining that composure to play the point structure how you want to win the point. So it was just awesome, and they did a phenomenal job over the summer with those weeks of the matches. So it was great.
Do you think you'll come back as a coach next season?
I really hope so. I loved every second. So hopefully they'll have me back again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Hannah, what else do I need to ask you about GGC, about NAIA? to help our audience just truly understand what a phenomenal opportunity these programs are for their juniors?
Yeah, I think, we hit a lot of points, but just speaking on GGC, personally myself, there's 5 divisions in tennis, and we at GGC get the chance to compete for a national championship each year, and not many schools get to do that. So I think it's a very special place to be here. The level is extremely high, just like top Division I programs, and the student athletes get to continue to play pro events and compete. And we have a 16-court facility here, private gym, so it's a great hub for us. The program is continue to grow, so I'm really excited to see where we'll continue to be in the future. So I know I'm going to give you my contact information if anybody wants to contact me about anything NAI, anything GGC or college tennis. I'm happy to help and navigate and direct them for sure.
Can you just quickly, before we wrap up, talk about the community support of your program?
Yeah.
Because that is a really big piece. And I know when our family was going through the recruiting process, one of the questions my son was asking is, what kind of attendance do you get at your matches?
Yeah, and so we're actually in Lawrenceville, just on the outskirts of Atlanta. And Lawrenceville, the city itself, we are the college for Lawrenceville, which is awesome. So the whole city sponsors, supports us. We have days, whether it's all the teams come down, all the restaurants that sponsor us, Jim and Nick's Barbecue, they come down and support. We have barbecue, we have food, and we really try and get into the community. Behind the tennis courts, we have, housing communities that all come out to our matches. And I think that's important because at the end of the day, having that support provides home for the players. It provides them comfort. They love going into Lawrenceville. And that's key for any college program as well. And then Atlanta itself, as we're so close, we're so many amazing schools in Atlanta. So I know for sure the Atlanta community really does get behind its teams, and that makes it really special.
I love that. Well, Hannah Keeling, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Took a little bit to make it happen, but I'm so glad we were able to get you on. And I look forward to seeing you. I'm going to be back in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll get to see each other then. And
yes, please connect.
Yeah, appreciate everything you do so much. And congratulations on all your success at Georgia Gwinnett College and all the programs you've been at, because you've left each one better than when you found it. And I think it's easy to say that the same is going to happen with Georgia Gwinnett, but hopefully you'll be there for a long time to come.
I hope so.
Wish you all the best in the coming season. To my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.
Thank you so much.